G'day, I'm Nev Sweeney and this is Under the Choco Tree. Continuing on with our series on soil testing, I want to talk to you a little bit this week about chemical soil testing, particularly around pH. The pH of your soil means how acid or how alkaline it is. It's a scale from 1 to 14. 1 is pretty damn acid, 14 is pretty damn alkaline, and 7 right in the middle is neutral. You want your soil for most veggies to be around 6.5 to 7. Technically speaking, pH is the minus log of the hydrogen ion concentration, which is not going to mean all that much to you, but is a wonderful thing to bring up at dinner parties. Makes people think you're very, very intelligent. However, moving on. There are a couple of ways of checking your pH. Some of them are qualitative, that is to say they give you an idea whether your soil is acidic or alkaline without giving you anything in the way of any numbers. Okay, so this is a quantitative test. That's to say it tells you whether you may have a problem or not, but it won't give you numbers in terms of pH. So I've got 2 little bottles here. One of them has vinegar, the other has about a 10 or 15% bicarbonate solution. So bicarb is of course alkaline, vinegar is acid. I've got 2 samples of soil here. If I put vinegar on the first one and you start to see it fizz, then that means that your soil is quite alkaline. If I put the bicarb on the soil and it starts to fizz, that means that the soil is quite acid. Now you can see here that in actuality neither of them are fizzing, so that means that the soil is roughly in the right area, because you want your soil to be almost neutral, if a tiny bit on the acid side. You want it to be around 6.5 to 7 for growing veggies. It varies for other plants, but for veggies that's the best way. So what we've got here is a test you can do in the field, which will tell you immediately if you've got a real problem, because if either one of them is fizzing, it means it's either really alkaline or really acid. That's an issue that you're going to have to address before you start doing some planting. But the ways of checking that give you a number to work on is really handy, because then you know just what you're dealing with. It also means that it enables you to make some changes to your soil and do it quantitatively. So 2 general ways for quantitative testing, and that is using a little pH meter and using a colorimetric test. I've used a number of the cheap pH meters and find them to be almost useless. I spent 20 years in the chemical industry doing various bits and pieces, working in laboratories, and we used very sensitive pH meters and we calibrated them every day to make sure that they were reading correctly. And there's no real way of doing that with these El Cheapos, and most of the ones that I've dealt with, it doesn't really matter what sort of soil you put the probe into, you get a reading of 7. So my recommendation for you is to use the colorimetric test. And probably the easiest way for me to tell you about that is to show you how it works. Okay, so this is a kit for taking a quantitative pH test. You get a bottle of dye, which changes colour according to the pH. You get a little bottle of contrast medium, so you can actually see what the colour is over the colour of the dirt that you're using. A nice little plastic palette to mix things on. A colour card. And the colour card shows you, depending upon what colour the dye takes, shows you what pH of the soil is that you've got. And you get a nice little plastic spatula for mixing it all together, which of course is the first thing that goes missing, so I use a teaspoon. To get the soil out of the sample, which we took earlier, it makes it easier if the soil is damp to start with, and this is still damp. So we put the teaspoon onto the palette, put 8 or 10 drops of dye on it, and then give it a bit of a mix around, and then we just give it a minute or two to develop the colour. So to be able to see what the colour is, we've got this barium sulfate, which is basically just an inert white powder. We put that on, and it acts, as I said, as a contrast medium so that you can actually see the colour. And you can see here where the colour has been developed. So if we compare the colour on the colour card to the colour of the sample, to me that looks about 6.5 or thereabouts, which, if in terms of your veggie patch, that's where you want it to be. If the pH is too low and you need to bring the pH up, you want to add something which is alkaline. Usually that's slime. What we want is gardener's lime. We don't want quicklime, which is calcium oxide. We don't want bricky's lime, which is calcium hydroxide, because even though they're both alkaline, they're really, really alkaline, and they'll rip the living daylights out of the soil biota. So we want calcium carbonate, the same sort of stuff that eggshells are made out of, or gardener's lime. That's what we want, because that will bring the pH up slowly and without doing horrible things to the soil instead. If the soil is too alkaline, and you want to bring it down, then you need to add something like a yellow powder. You can get hold of it at your local hardware store or nursery, and you need to mix that in. So now you have some insight into testing your soil for pH. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.